So the recording has started. All right, here we are, 10:32. Deneen Diamond here for the Center of Excellence for Health. I'm super excited about the presentation today and to welcome Kathleen MacMillan. And we're very excited to have Ty from Fundy Middle High School. And we are excited to get going. So I'm going to do a quick bio and then we'll get started. So Kathleen MacMillan graduated from Miramichi Valley High School in 2013. She is now a licensed pharmacist who obtained her degree from Dalhousie University. She is also a medical student at Dalhousie Medicine, New Brunswick, and serves as a co-president of the Dalhousie Medicine class of 2023. Kathleen served on the Dalhousie Medicine and Missions Committee from 2020 to 21 and the Dalhousie Pharmacy and Missions Committee from 2016 to 2019. Whew, how do you do all this? She also served as an interviewer for both admissions committees for several years. Kathleen has co-authored several peer-reviewed journal articles and led the collaborative writing of textbook chapter on interprofessional student leadership. Ooh, you can tell it's Friday for me too. She also co-founded the Dalhousie University Interprofessional Mini Courses Battling the Burnout Epidemic, which teaches students about wellness and strategies. Notably, Kathleen was recently selected to receive the Canadian Medical Hall of Fame Award for Medical Students, which recognizes her leadership and academic achievements. Kathleen has a strong passion for interprofessional collaboration and research. She hopes to encourage other New Brunswick students to become involved in healthcare. Wow, we are so blessed to have you here at the Center of Excellence. I am going to turn it over to Kathleen, and thank you so much.
All right, thanks, Deneen. So I'm just going to share my screen, if I can. Just a sec here. All right, and can everybody see that okay?
Yep.
Wonderful, thank you. All right, so like Deneen said, I'm Kathleen. So I'm a pharmacist and I'm in my third year of medical school right now. And I'm here to talk to you about career profiles, physicians and pharmacists in New Brunswick. Both professions are amazing and I'm very excited to have the opportunity to talk to you about them. So just for a quick outline, I'm going to go through my disclosures, go over pharmacy and what pharmacy is all about, just a brief overview, and then medicine. And I'm going to talk a little bit about just some generic tips on preparing to apply to these programs, and then talk a little bit about the program interviews. So just to start, I don't have any conflicts of interest. This presentation is based on my personal experience, of course. So I'm going to start off with pharmacy. So I might just start with a question, but does anybody know what a pharmacist does? And if not, that's okay. Pharmacists do a lot of things. So I'm going to start with what like a lot of people might think a pharmacist does. It's probably one of the most common routes for a pharmacist to take, and that would be working in community pharmacy. So some pharmacists will work at drugstores, such as Pharmasave, Walmart, Shoppers, Medicine Shop, Lawton's, lots of different options in the community, of course. And not only do they dispense medications and counsel patients on their medications to make sure it's safe for them and that they're taking it appropriately, they can also give injections and they prescribe for minor ailments as well, such as urinary tract infections. They can prescribe for smoking cessation, and they can also prescribe for mild acne. So the pharmacist's scope of practice is expanding, and it continues to expand every year, which is very exciting for the pharmacy community. And next we have hospital pharmacists. So before I entered pharmacy, I didn't really know what a hospital pharmacist was, but it's a very exciting profession as well. So of course they work in the hospital, and they're a very, very important part of the interprofessional team because they watch for dangerous drug interactions and advise the healthcare team on appropriate medications to use for each individual patient. You'll often see them in the emergency department, on cardiovascular rounds. You can see them in geriatrics. You can see them in critical care. You can find them all over the place. And really their goal is to make sure that everything that the healthcare team does is safe for the patient. So they'll have their list of medications and ensure there's no interactions. And of course, they'll also be able to make recommendations on what potentially should be prescribed for the patient. And next we have drug information pharmacists. So They're the pharmacists that are basically available for other healthcare providers to call with their drug information questions. So let's say you're working with a medication that isn't prescribed very often, or you have a question about the medication that you think you might prescribe as a team. You could call the drug information pharmacist and they would do some research and call you back with the answer to your question. And then finally, some pharmacists are involved in research. So they can work on anything from quality improvement to making their workplace, a better place for everyone, to researching how to better de-prescribe medications, because some medications, if there's too many medications prescribed, sometimes there are some side effects that go along with them. So pharmacists can sometimes research, ways to de-prescribe a little bit better. And there's all different types of research that pharmacists are involved in as well. And those are just some examples. The list actually does go on. Pharmacists can get involved in numerous different things. And if you are interested in pharmacy, I would encourage you to check out the Canadian Society of Hospital Pharmacists, the New Brunswick Pharmacists Association. There are different advocacy bodies and resources for you to look into to see if you'd like to know more about these different fields of pharmacy. And next we have medicine. So there are many types of physicians. From family doctors to pediatricians to radiologists, there's really something in medicine for everyone, I believe. So some physicians, such as family physicians, emergency doctors, they work on the front lines, and they're often the first physician to see a new patient with a new complaint. Other physicians, such as surgeons, pediatricians, internal physicians, are sometimes referred patients by family doctors, emergency physicians, that sort of thing. And there are many different types of doctors again. But all physicians can get involved in academics, they can teach, they can do research if they so choose, and there are tons of avenues. There are so many specialties that it would take too long, I think, to go through them all. But there are ways, like if you go on Google and type in types of doctors, that sort of thing, you can look into the different specialties that are available in medicine. So I'm interested. How should I prepare to apply? So really, there is no perfect answer to this question. And I think that's very, very important because everybody is unique and everybody brings their own skill set to the table. But I do just have a couple of generic tips that I'll share just from my personal experience. So I think the first point that I'm going to talk about is that programs do tend to have required courses that you need to complete in order to enroll in their program. So it's really important, like let's say you're interested in pharmacy or medicine or maybe something else, to check out their websites to ensure that in your first year of university or your second year, that you're taking the required courses that you need to apply. And if you don't take it in your first or second year, that's okay, but you might need to take an additional year in order to get these required courses. So it might be good just to be informed if you're thinking about what you'd like to do. Next is extracurriculars and volunteering. So programs do tend to look for well-rounded applicants. For this reason, if you have an interest outside of academics and school, whether it's sports or drama or choir or cooking or anything at all, make time for it. Because not only will it make you a well-rounded applicant, it will allow you to focus on something other than school, which is really good for mental health, wellness, making connections, that sort of thing, which is important too. And then we have research, and I have a question mark beside research because I personally love research. But you don't have to get into any professional program. But healthcare professionals can be involved in research if they so choose. And by learning something about research early on in your career, you may be better able to decide whether it is something that interests you or not. And for application purposes, having some research may be something you can talk about during your interview as well, or in your essay, but research certainly isn't required. It's just something that might be beneficial. The next one is while you are in high school, which is where you are now, it is really important to be as prepared for university as you can. Reach out to your guidance counselor, your trusted teacher to ensure the courses you are taking now are preparing you for your future, because university is a very, very big change. And having courses in high school that might prepare you to do well, especially in your first year of university, I think will serve you well. As an example, so I went to Miramichi Valley High, and in grade 12, I took a couple of advanced courses, and those courses were actually very similar to my first year of university. Like the content was very, very, very similar between the two. And that really helped me because university is a big change. You're away from your parents. You're dealing with all of this other change, and having courses in your first year that you've already kind of seen before, I found was actually very beneficial. And of course, do your best in university. Go to your classes in first year. Not everybody does, but putting the effort in, I think, is good if you can. And then finally, in order to really, really know if your chosen program is for you, read about it. So on their website, you can talk to students that are potentially already enrolled in the program, if that is an option for you. But just really knowing about the program, because of course, for application purposes, knowing what you're applying to is important. And also for your future, like, do you really want this? Maybe talking to people that are already in the discipline, like a pharmacist or a physician, if you have the option, might be beneficial as well. So now I'm going to go on to some application myths. So the first one is, my grades are not as good as I wanted them to be. I probably don't have a chance of getting accepted to the program. So do people think this is true or false?
False.
Thanks. Yeah, so it's false. So the applications are based on much more than grades. So your interview, your involvement, various other things that really kind of make you into a full, well-rounded applicant, as I talked about earlier. So just make sure you meet the minimum GPA cutoff and MCAT, the minimum MCAT if you're applying to medical school, and just the MCAT is another exam that you would take if you're applying to medicine. So always do your best academically, but don't be discouraged if you're not at the very top of your class. Just do your best and you'll be okay. And the next one is, all applicants to pharmacy and medicine have done a lot of extracurriculars, activities, and research. So this is also false. So many of the applicants to these programs may have done a few extracurriculars that they're really interested in, and some actually haven't done any research at all. My personal feeling is that research is nice to get involved in, but it is in no way necessary to get, accepted into a program. But I think it's helpful. So now just for a little bit of advice from my experience. So, I applied to Dal Pharmacy and then I applied to Dal Medicine. And when you're applying to these programs, it's very easy to look around you and think, oh my goodness, all of these other people are applying to these programs too. This person took a year off to study for the MCAT and I'm working full time. They'll probably do better than me. There's all of these thoughts that will be floating through your head when you apply to these things. But it's really important to focus on you, because everybody has their own unique skill set and their own unique way to get into these programs. And I think that's what's really cool about applying. So don't be discouraged if there's people around you talking about all of their amazing achievements. Just focus on yours and you'll be okay. And my next tip would be for your resume or CV. So even if you could start now in high school, it's never too early to start keeping track of the things that you've been involved in. Because when you go to apply to these programs in a few years, if you're still interested, it's awfully nice to have a list of all of the things that you were involved in that you could talk about during your interview, that you could write in your essay. Maybe you were involved in a high school sport, or maybe you were the president of your student society. I don't know. Maybe you were involved in drama, but just otherwise you might forget. Because 4 years down the road or 2 years down the road, if you apply to Dal Farm, you might not remember everything that you did. And it's very difficult to think back and try to remember everything that you did and why. So just keeping a little list might be beneficial going forward. And then finally, be aware of application deadlines. So Dal Med and Dal Farm both have deadlines that you need to submit your paperwork to apply to the programs. If you miss the deadline, unfortunately, that means you're going to have to wait until the following year. And while you're in university, you're going to have exams, you're going to have other commitments, and it's very easy to accidentally miss a deadline. So just being organized, keeping track of when you need to get things in, very, very beneficial, because it does happen that sometimes people accidentally miss the deadline. So, and I know you're still in high school, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about what happens if you apply to a professional program at Dal and you get an interview for either pharmacy or medicine. They both use the multiple mini interview process, and I thought I'd just give you a taste as to what that was. So these are some example MMI questions. I got them from the Dalhousie pharmacy website, so they're publicly available. If you'd like to look at them later, they're on the internet. And my source is just at the bottom there. And I'm not going to go through the questions themselves, but this is just very much an example of what you might see during the interview period. And there are also great practice questions available via other sites online. If you just type in MMI practice questions, you're going to get a lot of questions. But just remember during the interview that the questions are really there for the interviewer to get to know you. And there is no perfect way to answer any MMI question. But I would argue that practice does make perfect, because if you get, a question like this and you really need to think of an answer on the fly, I believe that is a skill. So the more questions that you can go through, probably the better off you'll be. And finally, how should I prepare? So for the multiple mini interview, I think that reading around global news is probably a good idea. For example, right now with COVID, I'm sure many of you are aware of the burnout of nurses and physicians and pharmacists. There's a lot of burnout going on. Maybe just being aware that that's a thing. It just makes it, I guess, better for you just to be more informed, because, then you're really interested, right? If you know what's going on in the field. Review. So we talked about the CV earlier, but to go over your CV and why did you do what you do, and what did you learn from it as well? Because I think that's really important, because you might be able to discuss it. And if you just kind of review everything, then you'll be more able to pull on those examples if you need to. And finally, practice. So family, friends, get them to go over questions with you. They'll pick up on things that you won't. For example, sometimes applicants talk a little bit fast and they might not even know that they're doing it. But if you talk to your friend or your family member, they might be able to tell you, hey, Kathleen, you're talking a little fast. Maybe next time you might want to slow down. And it's just very helpful to have that extra set of ears and eyes to make sure that you're doing your very best. Yeah, so that is the end of the presentation. I would be happy to take any questions. I'm just going to unshare my screen. There.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. That was awesome, and a lot of information in a very short time. So we have two students on, Ty and I believe Madeline. If you folks have any questions, certainly the floor is open, and Kathleen is a wealth of knowledge, and I'm sure she'd be very happy to answer any questions. Selfishly, I've put these presentations together because my brother is in medical school right now in Newfoundland, and he found it very difficult to navigate all of the systems on how to get where he wanted to be. And just like Kathleen, my brother did an undergrad, then he did a master's, now he's doing his PhD and doing his medical school at the same time. So there's never really a solid road to follow, and I think Kathleen really hit that on the head. And I think sometimes as high school students, and I know for me, I got very overwhelmed with, well, I don't know what my plan is. And sometimes that's a good thing, because you can really, I guess, expand what you want to study and what you're passionate about if it's not one narrow road. Because like Kathleen has done many different things, and she's still, trying to figure out where it is that she's going to land in the medical world. She knows that the medical world is her passion, which is beautiful. But I think that she has a lot to offer. So Ty or Madeline, do you have any questions?
I don't have any.
Thanks, Ty. Madeline?
Yeah, I just have a quick one. Can you hear me okay?
Can you speak up just a little bit?
I'm just wondering if you applied to the Dalhousie pharmacy program right out of high school, or did you complete something before that?
Good question. So a little bit about the Dal pharmacy program. So when I applied after 2 years of Mount Allison. And when I graduated, I got a Bachelor of Science in Pharmacy degree. But very, very recently, the Dalhousie pharmacy program moved to a PharmD program, which is a Doctor of Pharmacy. And now you do need 2 years after high school to apply. Before, you only needed 1. So, and the required courses that you need would be on their website. And in order to apply, you would need to take the 2 years of the courses that they'd like you to take. and then you'd be able to apply. But very good question.
Awesome. Well, thank you. All right. Well, unless you have more questions, Madeline, Ty, thank you so much for attending. And Kathleen, you've been a rock star. We will have this recording forever. And I think you covered a lot of material, like I said earlier, and I believe that it's going to be very helpful for students in the high school setting that are trying to navigate where they're going and what they're doing in the medical world. So Ty and Madeline, if you want to share with your friends that there's going to be another session this afternoon at 1:30. And the medical students are going to have a full panel of medical experts and from New Brunswick, which is kind of exciting to talk to the students about what they do and what that looks like. So everything from lab technician to physiotherapist and that type of thing. So if you're interested in that, it's 1:30 right here in the Center of Excellence for Health. I'll put the website in the chat. So certainly tell your friends, tell your teachers if they want to attend. That would be awesome. And, oh, wrong thing I put in the chat. I will put that in just a minute. But Kathleen, thank you so much. You are a blessing, and we really appreciate the work that you do with the high school students. And we know that you go above and beyond to help those folks, especially in the Miramichi. So thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, and thanks for coming out.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to get that in the chat. I'm going to stop the recording. Stop.